July was a reading month, and I'm hoping August is going to be even better because I've got some life updates. Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and today it is time for a July TBR. But before we get into the July TBR, it is time for a quick update on the Discord server. I have newly revamped the Discord server. I have cleaned it up, made it much more accessible, easier to navigate, and we've added new moderator channels and added a new moderator. So now we have added Kay from Kay's Hidden Shelf, my good friend Kayla. Of course, I'll have her channel linked down below, and you can check out the Wizardly Duo Discord if you want to talk to her on a more regular basis. We've also added dedicated reviewer channels for Nico, Patrick Ryan, and the Boiled Jellyfish, and me as well if you want to talk on a more regular basis. So that link is in the description box down below, and I hope you enjoy the new server. And then, typical life update. So, life changes, and my daughter is now 3, so she is going to be starting preschool, or like a pre-preschool thing. So I might have a little bit more reading time. And so, because I might have a little bit more reading time, I have scheduled 13 books on this TBR. But before we jump into this TBR, please do me a favor and like this video and subscribe to the channel, because if you don't subscribe to the channel, I can't hit 10,000 subscribers whenever that may happen. And if I don't hit 10,000 subscribers, Alan and Jimmy will never let me into the 10K club. And frankly, I hear it on good authority that once you hit 10K, the air just smells like chocolate chip cookies, and I just want that experience in my life. Now, all joking aside, let's start talking about the books that I don't own physically, and that is going to be Mark of the Fool, number 3 by J.M. Clark. This is another progression fantasy that I picked up after, I can't say it was after I finished Mother of Learning. It's when I was getting close to Mother of Learning. My boss recommended that I read Mark of the Fool, because it was narrated by Travis Baldree, and it had kind of this nice progression element, and I just love me some progression fantasy. And I was like, you know what? I will try that. And now I'm 3 volumes in, and I think the 4th volume comes out in August, so then I can read the 4th volume in September. Do I understand the calendar? I think I understand the calendar. So, yes, I'm absolutely loving this. Alex is fantastic. His progression and his character relationships and everything has been very rewarding. I'm planning on doing a series review on this one once I'm caught up, because I think this one is one that, unless you're into progression fantasy, like, you haven't really heard about it. Most people have heard about Cradle and Mother of Learning, but this one I feel like, while popular within the progression fantasy realm, is still kind of flying under the radar of general fantasy readers, and I think that's a darn shame. Then I am reading Mage Errant Book 3. Now I know you're saying, but Andrew, you said you were going to read Mage Errant Book 3 last month. Well, I started Mage Errant Book 3 and then realized while I remember the broad strokes, I didn't remember the fine details of character arcs. So certain, relationships weren't clicking with me anymore, and, how we reached certain, areas and attained certain powers, I couldn't quite remember. So I instead did the publisher's pack for 1 and 2 on audio, narrated by Ralph Lister, and I had a fantastic experience with that. I am now back up to date with that. So I read Mage Errant last month, but it was a reread so that I could then be prepared for Trader and Skyhold. Then I did this kind of project with one of my patrons, and he's just given me so many recommendations, so many great recommendations, that I was just like, okay, so you've given me all these recommendations, why don't you pick out 4 books that you think I'm gonna love, because I've read so many just based off of your recommendations already, and I'm having a fantastic time with those recommendations. And he was like, yeah, sure. And this is Spyro. If you don't know Spyro, Spyro's amazing. And so he picked out for me Wandering Inn, number 1. I've heard a lot of people love The Wandering Inn. It is a massively long series, so right now I'm just going to commit to the first volume and see if it clicks with me, because I think the audiobook that I have is 55 hours, so it's a bit of a chunker. And speaking of chunkers, you're going to notice quite a lot of Thickum boys here on this TBR which I'm looking at my stack now, and I'm like looking at 3 books this big, so I don't know what I've done to myself, and I guess if I count it, then the 4th one would be The Wandering Inn, and it'd be like that big. I would like to fit in Spirits of Vengeance by Rob J. Hayes, just so I can close out that trilogy. I've been reading this trilogy for about 2 years. I finally read Pawn's Gambit here recently. I loved the experience, and so I'm hoping to just cement that with Spirits of Vengeance and close out, I believe it's the Mortal Techniques trilogy. Fantastic, fantastic stuff. Then I am going to be, hopefully, fingers crossed, returning to Reincarnation. This is Wandering Inn and Reincarnation were picked by Spyro. And Reincarnation, I've read the first 2. It's been a minute, so I'm hoping what happened with Mage Errant doesn't happen again. But I think I remember that mostly correct. And I really enjoyed the Reincarnation series because I thought it was hilarious, the stuff that's going on there. So we're going to read the 3rd volume, and then if I really enjoy it, I can then continue the series from there. And then he also picked out Sufficiently Advanced Magic by Andrew Rowe. I tried this one when I first started BookTube, and I was trying to read it physically. I now have the audiobook, so I'm going to go that route now instead, and we're going to see if I can't finally find out what all the fuss is about. And then the final book that he picked for me to read is a King book, and I'm never going to complain about having to read Stephen King, and this is The Talisman, and I've heard this is a love it or hate it style of book. This one has a sequel called Black House, which I plan on reading in September if I end up loving this one. If not, I may end up pushing Black House, but we'll see what happens. And then, yeah, so I'm very excited for those reads. Then physically, my patrons also get to select a book anywhere off my TBR. This month, it was Mike Molman who got to select my pick for me, and he selected Lonesome Dove. This is Thickum Boy number 2, if you're keeping count, by Larry McMurtry. Murtry. Okay, I was like, is it McMurdy or McMurtry? I don't know. But we've got this nice, thick UK paperback. I've heard the audiobook for this one isn't all that good. Like, I think the narrator's supposed to be like a mouth breather or something like that. I don't know. That's what I heard, or that's what I think I heard. But I've heard many of my favorite booktubers really love this one, and so I'm excited to finally see what all the fuss is about. And then, of course, The Wick Wire Watch by Jacqueline Hagan. This is one that, since I did the first chapter challenge with my good friend Tori over at Tori Talks, I've been dying to get to, because I've already read the first chapter. I loved it, and then I believe the 2nd book is out, and the 3rd book is coming out soonishly, and I want to get those on my shelf. I watched an interview that Tori did with the author, and I am all the more intrigued to read this one. So, yes, this is very high on my TBR. This is what I'm anticipating to be one of my books of the month. If the one that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes doesn't absolutely just blow everything else out of the water, because I always hear that it's absolutely amazing. Then, of course, continuing with the read-along over with Alan from the Library of Alexandria. I believe this is book 2, Servants of the Empire. This is by Raymond E. Feist and Janie Wirtz. At the time of recording, I haven't started the first book yet, but I love Janie Wirtz and I love Raymond E. Feist, and Patrick really, really recommends this series. So I'm going to go ahead and preemptively put this is Thickum Boy number 3, by the way. I'm going to go ahead and put this on the TBR, and we are going to slot this in, and I am very, very excited to read this one. And then continuing with the Bound and the Broken read-along. Quick cut-in. So continuing the Bound and the Broken read-along, I discussed it with my fellow moderators, and we decided that for this month we are only going to do Of Darkness and Light. Initially, it was going to be The Exile as well, but we're just going to do this one so the people don't feel overwhelmed. Back to the video. Let's have a good old time with my boy Ryan Cahill. And then closing out this trilogy by Stephen Aryan, we have Chaos Mage by Stephen Aryan. I'm very excited for this because this is the conclusion to his first trilogy. I've always enjoyed reading I've always enjoyed reading... Did I say that correctly? I think I've said that correctly. I've always enjoyed reading books written by Stephen Aryan. There we go. We'll phrase it like that. But yeah, that is everything that I am planning to read in August. Let me know in the comment section down below, what are you planning to read in August? Let's have a good old discussion. And as always, guys, till next time, peace out. Stay magical. Bye. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons.